Good morning, distinguished parliamentary secretaries, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Marianne, many thanks not only for the preparations of this symposium, but also for the beautiful day that you prepared as well, and for quite an exceptional venue. I am delighted to speak to you on behalf of the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Federica Mogherini. Unfortunately, she could not be here with us today in beautiful Ottawa. I therefore bring you her greetings. This year's symposium on the cooperation between the European Union and Canada in crisis management coincides, as you mentioned, Marianne, with the 40th anniversary of the opening of the EU mission in Ottawa and our first framework agreement. But the ties that bind Europe and Canada are much deeper and stronger. They are rooted in the memory of the struggles for freedom and democracy. Several times in the not-too-distant past, they brought Canadian soldiers over to European shores of the Atlantic precisely to defend those values. Those struggles proved a crucible for Canadian nationhood, as they did for the European integration project. Sadly, the values and ideals that bind us are again under threat. Who would predict that a quarter of a century after the end of the Cold War, Russia would annex Crimea? Or that a terrorist network such as Daesh would attract thousands of foreign fighters from around the world, including from Europe and even some from Canada, to inflict terror upon people in Iraq, Syria, Libya, and even as far as the Philippines and beyond. And let me here join Canadians in mourning for the terrible killing of John Ridsdale. Ladies and gentlemen, today as yesterday, Europe and Canada stand shoulder to shoulder in confronting the challenges which face us both. But before discussing in greater detail our common engagement in international peace and security, allow me to do a quick rewind in our relationship. A wine gets better with age, so they say. Born in France's Cognac region to a family of brandy merchants, Jean Monnet, one of the main architects of the European integration project, would have surely agreed. He visited Canada on his first extended business trip, then crisscrossed it many times. Those journeys left a deep imprint. He recorded encountering throngs of migrants, leaving behind their old prejudices and building a new federation with gusto and optimism. He believed that such a change could also be effected in Europe. And he lived to see it, becoming the president of the high authority of the European Coal and Steel Community, a precursor to the European Union. But he was not satisfied with effecting change only within Europe. In 1961, as the head of the Action Committee for the United States of Europe, he proposed the creation of an Atlantic community. The new European community, Monnet argued, should join forces with North America to constitute what he called the cornerstone of world peace. The EU-Canada relationship, like brandy, if you don't mind my comparison, has gotten better and better with age. As we speak, Monnet's vision is turning into reality. Having turned 40, EU and Canada are moving closer and closer towards an Atlantic community. We are on the cusp of ushering in the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. By deepening our transatlantic trade and investment relationship, creating new jobs and growth, we will lay the foundations for transatlantic economic security in the 21st century. Accompanying the trade deal is the Strategic Partnership Agreement. It enshrines our commitment to cooperate in promoting international peace and stability. This agreement will galvanize our deep, multifaceted relationship towards achieving our shared strategic objectives. This is exactly what we're striving to do together. In this context, I warmly welcome Canada's present contribution to the EU's crisis management civilian missions in Ukraine, Kosovo, and the Palestinian territories, as well as to the military operation in Mali. As part of the EU advisory mission for civilian security sector reform to Ukraine, Canadian experts are sharing their knowledge and experience in democratic standards of policing, as well as specialized forensic techniques with Ukrainian counterparts. In January this year, the mission signed an agreement with Agri-Team Canada, contracted by the Canadian government to assist in developing Ukraine's patrol police to pool their expertise. They have linked up to strengthen the leadership skills of law enforcement officers in Ukraine and improve their first response incident management. Canadians have also been helping the European Union strengthen rule of law in Kosovo, with valuable contributions to the largest civilian operation deployed by the European Union to date, more than 3,000 staff at its peak. Canadian police officers have been serving the EU police mission for the Palestinian territory. Here, they contribute skills in frontline policing, accountability, and human resources. Thanks to financial contributions by Canada, the EU training mission in Mali has been able to jumpstart a new human resources information system. These important contributions and a common world outlook are at the basis of the EU and Canada's strategic dialogue on security and defense. Just yesterday, we had a fruitful discussion on a broad range of issues, from the fight against Daesh, the situation in Ukraine, EU-NATO relations ahead of the Warsaw Summit, and support for the United Nations, just to name some of the key items on our agenda. Such dialogues help foster improved cooperation in the interest of our strategic partnership. And indeed, we need to be more strategic in the way we approach crisis management. The EU is interested to learn more about Canada's review of defense policy. We trust that the Euro-Atlantic vector of your defense policy will be emboldened, and Canada will continue to invest in its relations with the European Union. The time for this exchange is opportune, as the EU too is finalizing work on its new global strategy for foreign and security policy. Over the course of many months, the team in charge of the global strategy has been holding intense and broad consultations, including civil society stakeholders as well as experts. The outcome of this work will be reflected in a document presented to the European heads of state and government this summer. We know what we want to achieve: strengthening the EU internally, bolstering our resilience and that of our partners, especially as hybrid threats are concerned, and improving the way we approach crises. As a union of 28, we mobilize public and private investments, cooperation in all domains, but also soldiers, police officers, observers. Furthermore, a network of some 141 delegations provides the European Union with global presence. In this manner, we pursue a comprehensive approach in response to crises and in our contribution to international peace and security. The global strategy is meant to provide a powerful narrative for this common EU action. It should also offer a springboard for further and deeper international engagement. At the same time, the EU is busy strengthening its security and defense policy through concrete projects aimed at tangible deliverables. This month, the European Union issued a major policy document, a joint communication on countering hybrid threats. Implementation of actions on these matters, notably strengthening the resilience of critical infrastructure, will enhance the EU's security, protecting member states and partners against operations of destabilization and subversion. We will also be looking at setting up a new hybrid fusion cell within the EU Intelligence and Situation Centre as a central hub for the production of analysis on hybrid threats. We're equally considering setting up in one of our member states a centre of excellence that will collect experience and help identify best practices. And of course, we will engage in deeper cooperation with NATO. The alliance has already adopted its own strategy. Given the overlaps in membership and the same threat environment, there is no question that we can reinforce and support each other immensely. Europe cannot be a credible security provider if we do not develop substantial defense capabilities. Here as well, the EU and NATO are joining forces in assisting our member states to live up to their commitments. The European Commission will be finalizing this year a defense action plan to mobilize financial and regulatory instruments in support of these efforts. This will include a preparatory action on research related to common security and defense policy. And it could pave the way towards a more ambitious program in defense research with funding set aside in the next multi-annual EU budget. The European Defence Agency is doing its share to help member states fill gaps in critical capability needs such as air-to-air refueling, unmanned aerial vehicles, satellite communication, and cyber defense. This requires enhanced, even systematic cooperation among member states. Some member states are moving further in Europeanizing their militaries. One example, in February, Germany agreed to integrate its sea battalion into the Navy of the Netherlands. Already one Dutch army brigade is under German command. This is unprecedented. Through steps such as these, EU member states develop multinational, deployable, and interoperable forces able to rapidly carry out crisis management operations, be it under an European Union, NATO, UN, or multinational framework. But peace building, to be successful, requires first and foremost the development of local and regional capacity. The European Union is therefore reviewing its instruments to enhance its support to the defense and military sector of our partners, particularly in Africa. And this is no doubt a focal point for EU missions and operations. Furthermore, a clear security development nexus establishes a compelling argument. And we have already provided more than 1 billion euros in support to the African Union peacemaking through the African Peace Facility. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just referred to the relevance of NATO-EU relations when talking about hybrid challenges and defense capabilities. The preparation for the Warsaw Summit of the Atlantic Alliance are an opportunity to reinforce joint collaboration. Beyond our efforts to improve situational awareness and early warning, or to work together on strategic communications in countering terrorist or destabilizing narratives, the EU and NATO are cooperating daily in a number of vital crisis theaters. More recently, this concerns illegal trafficking of migrants. We're grateful to Canada for contributing the HMCS Fredericton to the NATO action in the Aegean. Already, NATO and Frontex have developed effective arrangements, but EU-NATO cooperation is also pursued in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe, in the Indian Ocean, and in Afghanistan. Arrangements such as the one recently signed on exchange of information on cybersecurity further underpin EU-NATO enhanced partnership. The United Nations also remains central to both the EU and Canada's contributions to international peace and security. Yesterday's EU-Canada dialogue took place in the Global Affairs building dedicated to Lester B. Pearson. The great Canadian liberal statesman, as you know well, was the brainchild for the creation of modern UN peacekeeping. We're glad that today Canada is further reaffirming its multilateralist UN vocation. We wish to work together with you for more effective peace operations. The EU's strategic partnership on peacekeeping and crisis management with the United Nations brings tremendous benefits not just to both stakeholders, but the people who are beneficiaries of support on the ground. We have seen the results of joint EU-UN collaboration in Mali, the Central African Republic, Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and in the Balkans, where EU operations have preceded, accompanied, or followed UN deployments at the UN's request. EU member states remain the main financial contributors to UN peacekeeping and now are also contributing substantially with personnel and forces to many UN operations, including Mali, Central African Republic, or Lebanon. We're working hard to implement the pledge the EU made at last year's Leaders' Summit on peacekeeping. Ladies and gentlemen, Canada's valuable contribution to EU crisis management operations, our common work within UN peacekeeping, vital EU-NATO relations, all underscore the huge role of our partnership in supporting international security. But in today's challenging times, we have to aim for more. This could extend to maritime security, including also in the Arctic, to security in the Western Hemisphere, Haiti being a case in point, but also optimizing our comprehensive approaches in fighting Daesh. Shoring up security governance in Libya lies ahead as a main international challenge that the EU is committed to address, and Canada's help will be most welcome. We should also explore moving forward in military contacts. Recently, senior European external action officials addressed a group of Canadian officers from the Canadian Forces College who came to Brussels. We can increase the frequency of such interactions and link up our own European Security and Defence College with the Canadian Forces College and other Canadian military and civilian institutions involved in education, training, and research. Integrating gender into crisis management is truly an important task that reflects the EU and Canada's dedication to the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. We should share lessons, especially as we seek to ensure a zero-tolerance policy for gender-based abuse and violence in peacekeeping missions. Recently, Natalia Schuster, a 25-year veteran with the Montreal Police Service, seconded to the EU's advisory mission to Ukraine, told the 60 Ukrainian officers she was training that police need to understand that men and women are affected by crime and violence in different ways. Finally, dealing with refugees and migrants, a challenge of global dimension, will continue to occupy our attention. The European Union is grateful to Canada for having opened its doors to 25,000 Syrian refugees and to thousands more yet to come this year. You are setting the example for others. Ladies and gentlemen, the task ahead is immense. I trust that this event, which has attracted so many experts and practitioners, will contribute to steering EU-Canada cooperation in security and defense policy. Furthermore, the EU-Canada Summit this fall should move our security relationship forward in the spirit of the Strategic Partnership Agreement. Security threats don't queue up in an orderly line. They require simultaneous, comprehensive approaches in multilateral frameworks. Addressing them requires partnerships. Only by acting more and more jointly will the European Union and Canada become more effective in addressing the threats and challenges to our security. Thank you.